Chapter 51 Dai Mubai Visits in the Dark Night. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Dai Hengyu understood Dai Yao's situation immediately, realizing it was just an excuse. He sighed inwardly, understanding Dai Yao's choice, but also feeling disgusted by the clan rules. He leaned back weakly, warning Dai Yao, "You need to understand that some things, once done, can't be undone." They looked at each other, both understanding the other's thoughts. Dai Hengyu hesitated, his eyes flashing, and asked reluctantly, "Are you really decided?" Dai Yao nodded firmly. Dai Hengyu closed his eyes, exhaling slowly, as if releasing years of frustration. The air thickened as they fell silent, and Dai Yao knew this was the pivotal moment. His uncle had to decide whether his feelings for him outweighed the family's rules. If the rules won, Dai Yao wouldn't leave this house, possibly facing imprisonment or death. If feelings were prioritized, Dai Hengyu would ignore his betrayal, allow him to leave the Star Luo Empire, and even help him. After a long silence, Dai Hengyu broke the tension. He glanced at Dai Yao, then said, "Go. Get out of Xingluo. I can buy you 7 days. After that, I can't hide the fact that you went to the spirit hall. I won't be responsible for what happens to you then." He waved Dai Yao away. "Thank you, third uncle." Dai Yao knelt, kowtowed 3 times, and left without looking back. He knew the sacrifice his uncle was making. As a prince of Xingluo, family rules were the foundation of his life. Letting Dai Yao go meant betraying his lifelong beliefs. His uncle's feelings outweighed his loyalty to the family. Third uncle was more like a real father than the emperor. "Thank you, third uncle." Dai Yao looked at the vice principal's nameplate on the door, feeling a surge of warmth. His 6 years in the cold palace had taught him caution. He had prepared for the worst. Dai Hengyu might place him under house arrest and hand him over to the elders. If that happened, he'd reveal his twin martial souls. Such talent would make even the White Tiger family hesitant to kill him, ensuring his survival. The Spirit Hall would also do anything to save him. Twin martial souls, in an era without gods, could make him a top-tier title Douluo, but that would mean his third uncle had completely abandoned him. He'd have no family in the Star Luo Empire, alone in the world, free to destroy everything without hesitation. Fortunately, Dai Hengyu hadn't chosen that path. Inside the vice president's office, the wall opened, and a grey-robed figure appeared, kneeling before Dai Hengyu. "Did you hear everything?" Dai Hengyu asked coldly, his warmth gone. "I did," the figure replied lifelessly. The Star Luo royal family had many types of guards, but the shadow guards, the royal family's personal bodyguards, were the best. They were all exceptional, some even at the Soul Saint level. The figure kneeling was a Contra-level shadow guard. "Eliminate everyone who knows about the fourth prince going to the Spirit Hall, and keep an eye on his whereabouts," Dai Hengyu ordered coldly, a sentence that sealed the fate of hundreds. In the Douluo continent, commoners were like ants. "Yes." The shadow guard vanished into black mist. Dai Yao, I lost your mother because of my mistake. Consider this my way of making up for it." Dai Hengyu went to the window, looking at the scenery outside, and said sadly. The vice principal's office felt desolate. Only 1 day remained before the duel. Dai Yao wasn't practicing. He sat by the waterfall with Zhu Zhuqing, enjoying the scenery. Under the night, the waterfall looked like white silk, outlining the night with a white edge. Animal sounds echoed from the surrounding forest. For the first time in 3 years, he found the waterfall beautiful. "You're such a workaholic." Zhu Zhuqing poked Dai Yao's face, complaining. Dai Yao smiled. "In the White Tiger family, if you didn't practice hard, you'd die. But the duel was tomorrow, more training was pointless." It was more important to calm down. He suddenly tensed. "What's wrong?" Zhu Zhuqing asked. "Nothing. You should go back and rest," Dai Yao said softly, looking at her. Zhu Zhuqing obeyed and returned to the room. Seeing her safely inside, Dai Yao walked into the forest. "Come out," he said to the shadows. "When did you spot me?" A white figure emerged, disheveled and unkempt, but his eyes were bright. It was Dai Mubai. Looks like your slump was just an act. You never stopped training. Dai Yao said. Same goes for you, right? Enduring humiliation and practicing hard. Dai Mubai shrugged. Dai Yao was surprised. He and Dai Mubai hadn't interacted in 3 years. He thought Dai Mubai had given up after his defeat, but it was a disguise. What do you want? Dai Yao asked. I'm leaving the Star Luo Empire tomorrow. Dai Mubai seemed confused. Leaving Xingluo was good news, but he didn't know who to share it with. He and Dai Yao were in similar situations. While he had a queen mother and an older brother, they were like strangers. He felt a strange connection with Dai Yao, perhaps because they were both looked down upon. Congrats, Dai Yao said, finally leaving this oppressive family. He was moved. Zhu Zhuqing was gone, but Dai Mubai was leaving. You should make plans too. This place isn't for us. Ever since Davis became captain of the Star Luo Royal Academy, he's been planning to get you, Dai Mubai warned. Thanks, but I have no plans yet, Dai Yao replied. Dai Yao was cautious. He wouldn't tell Dai Mubai he was leaving in a few days. Dai Mubai shook his head, thinking Dai Yao was naive. He looked at the small house by the pool, its dim light casting a beautiful shadow. He told Dai Yao, with a hint of envy, treat her well. I don't need you to tell me that. In the dark night, 2 men would walk the same path. Chapter 52. The curtain opens. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 52. The curtain opens. As Dai Mubai left, Dai Yao said something cryptic. Don't sweat it. We'll meet again. Dai Mubai was confused. What's that supposed to mean? You'll see. The next day, Dai Yao woke up to the sunrise. After a quick wash, he put on a simple white outfit. Zhu Zhuqing carefully straightened his clothes, smoothing out any wrinkles. She looked down, silent. Dai Yao understood how she felt, stroked her back, and reassured her, it's going to be okay. Zhu Zhuqing couldn't hold back anymore and threw her arms around him. He felt her trembling. You have to win, and you have to come back, Zhu Zhuqing choked out, tears in her voice. I promise you, I will, Dai Yao vowed solemnly. He opened the door to find Feng Wudong and Zhang Xiaofan waiting, their faces etched with worry. Dai Yao couldn't resist a little joke. You guys always look so serious. It's not like I'm never coming back. Still got jokes, huh? Feng Wudong rolled her eyes. You're up against the second prince, who's been a big name at the academy for years. He's strong and famous. Even if nobody thinks you can win, we'll be cheering you on from the sidelines. Zhang Xiaofan nodded in agreement. You guys think so highly of me? Dai Yao asked with a smile. Seeing their worried faces, he dropped the joking tone and said seriously, don't worry. I'm going to win this duel. They didn't know where Dai Yao's confidence came from, but his tone relaxed them. Dai Yao's duel with the second prince had been the talk of the town. He was also a prince, also a top-tier beast spirit and white tiger spirit, and also a great spirit master. It was a recipe for massive attention. Not just the students, but many teachers were anticipating this competition. Soul masters from outside the academy were drawn in as well. The highest-ranking attendee was Platinum Bishop Ferdinand from the Star Luo Imperial City Spirit Temple. Because it was a duel between 2 princes, it also attracted the 5 elders from the Presbyterian Council stationed in the Imperial City, as well as numerous nobles from the principality. As the last sliver of moon faded, the fiery dawn began to chase away the darkness. The moment the first ray of sunlight touched the academy, the quiet atmosphere shattered. The promised day was here. For the duel between the 2 princes, they'd opened the long-dormant White Tiger Duel Arena. This was the premier dueling arena, reserved only for events like the Continental Advanced Soul Master Academy Elite Competition. The White Tiger Dueling Grounds reputation echoed across the continent. Many Soul Masters dreamed of having a no-holds-barred fight there during their time at the academy. The White Tiger Dueling Arena was enormous and circular, with stone steps rising around the arena like a colossal amphitheater. From the highest steps, the duelists in the arena looked like ants. You needed special equipment to get a good view. Even so, the spacious arena filled up quickly, and the roaring crowd filled everyone's ears. The electric atmosphere was infectious. A large open space had been prepared on the high platform for dignitaries. Not only did it offer the best view, but it also provided a better overall experience, but even this space was jam-packed. Soul masters from the principality studying at the Royal Academy and nobles from the Empire had all come. At the very front, a few spots remained open. These were reserved for the 4 princes, the 5 elders of the Presbyterian Council, Dai Mubai, the Academy's vice-president, and Ferdinand, the Platinum Bishop of the Spirit Hall. It was a pity they only had 10 days to prepare, otherwise, representatives from the 7 major sects would have shown up. Many people were already seated. Amidst the rising noise, Bishop Ferdinand suppressed his glee at the prospect of recruiting Dai Yao, plastered on his practiced fake smile, and needled the 5th elder beside him. My, isn't this just like old times, 3 years ago? Only this time, the 4th prince's opponent has changed from the 3rd prince to the 2nd. Your Star Luo Empire is overflowing with talent. It's a shame you don't know how to appreciate it. He added silently, but the Spirit Hall certainly does. The 3rd prince, Dai Mubai, sitting nearby, winced, but quickly recovered, opened a wine bottle, and took a swig, playing the part of a hopeless case. The smell of alcohol made those around him frown. Hearing Ferdinand's sly tone, the 5th elder scowled. Humph. Our Star Luo Empire has been around for thousands of years. We have our ways. Unlike your Spirit Hall, where yesterday the Pope's name was Qian, today it's Bai, and tomorrow it might be Hu. No tradition at all. The 5th elder wouldn't argue about clan rules but directly attacked the Spirit Hall's lack of consistent leadership. Ferdinand just smiled, thinking, maybe the Pope's name will be Dai tomorrow. That the 5th elder felt even more repulsed by Ferdinand's fake smile, sensing something sinister beneath it. In the arena, the 2nd prince was calmly meditating, waiting for his opponent. He was dressed in exquisite clothing, sitting with graceful posture. Instead of the White Tiger family's typical ruggedness, he was strikingly handsome. Many female spectators were thrilled. Davis sat on the high platform, watching Dai Yaming's show of elegance, and sneered inwardly. If he hadn't been vying for captain of the Star Luo Royal Academy team, he would have gotten rid of Dai Yaming and Dai Yao long ago. He knew that Dai Yaming, behind his refined facade, was a cunning schemer. He'd been caught off guard by him several times. Dai Yaming, just you wait. If you beat that brat Dai Yao today, I'll take you down tomorrow. If you want to challenge me, I won't hold back. He thought Dai Yao had no chance. How could a soul master with only 2 soul rings stand a chance against Dai Yaming, who had been competing for years and whose soul power was nearly at level 30? As time passed, the moment of the duel finally arrived. The roaring crowd slowly quieted, and all eyes focused on the entrance on the other side, waiting for the arrival of the other duelist, the legendary coward of the Academy, the 4th prince, Dai Yao. Suddenly, Ferdinand's narrowed eyes snapped open, and he said, "Here he comes." Chapter 53 Testing. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Edited content. At the far end of the arena, a figure in white emerged. His golden hair flowed just past his shoulders, framing a face set with determination. He stood ramrod straight, his dark eyes shone like distant stars. His appearance sent a ripple of excitement through the crowd. Several girls visibly swooned. Snorts of disapproval cut through the air from the platform above. Zhu Zhuqing and Davis both made their displeasure known. Davis was annoyed that Dai Yao was drawing more attention than he was. Show off all you want, kid. Let's see how cocky you are at the end of the day. Zhu Zhuqing fumed. She shot a venomous look at Zhu Zhuqing, but Dai Mubai blocked her view. Dai Mubai, with a playful tone, raised an eyebrow at Zhu Zhuqing. Hey, if you're bored, why don't you come sit with me, Dai Yao's little girlfriend? Hearing the words little girlfriend, Zhu Zhuqing blushed and subtly shifted away from Zhu Zhuyue. Meanwhile, the atmosphere in the arena had shifted. So, you finally stopped hiding? Dai Yaming sneered, glaring at Dai Yao. Ever since Dai Yao's fight with Fatty was still out of commission. Even with help from the support-type soul master, Fatty's defeat had cost him face. Many nobles who had previously supported him had abandoned him, and his power had diminished considerably. Dai Yao was the reason for all of it. Dai Yao simply smiled at Dai Yaming's words. We both know why I took a break. Simple insults won't get to me. Dai Yaming's expression darkened. He was a strategist, a general, not a frontline fighter. Just then, a Soul Emperor-level referee appeared. He flew into the air and held up his hands, signaling for silence. Please be quiet. Don't interfere with the match. Landing between the two competitors, he announced, no blades or hidden weapons are allowed. The first to fall or yield loses. Any objections? No, Dai Yao and Dai Yaming replied in unison, their eyes locked, and a palpable sense of competition filled the air. Begin. That the referee lowered his hand, officially starting the match. Dai Yaming immediately summoned his white tiger spirit. The character, King, on his forehead radiated an undeniable authority. Dai Yaming, level 29 attack type battle soul master, white tiger spirit. I look forward to the match. That even from 100 meters away, the sheer power emanating from him made the front row spectators gasp. They felt a crushing weight on their chests. Even those in the highest seats could feel a faint pressure. The difference in power created a heavy atmosphere, and the overwhelming soul power startled them. They couldn't imagine the pressure on Dai Yao, but at that moment, Dai Yao felt nothing. His skin seemed to ripple, deflecting the pressure. Despite the 6-level gap in soul power, he was unaffected. 3 years of training weren't wasted after all, Dai Yao thought with satisfaction. 3 years of grueling training under the waterfall, enduring immense pressure, had led to this moment. The difference in soul power was no longer a factor. He bowed slightly and said, Dai Yao, level 23 attack type battle soul master, sacred white tiger spirit. I look forward to the match. That before he finished speaking, he unleashed explosive step, shooting toward Dai Yaming like a bolt of white lightning. As he moved, the sacred white tiger spirit manifested around him. While the wings on his back couldn't provide true flight, they offered a significant boost to his speed. In the blink of an eye, he was right in front of Dai Yaming. So fast. Dai Yaming thought in shock. Dai Yao's eyes reflected Dai Yaming's fear. It had only taken a few breaths for Dai Yao to cross the distance. How is it possible that my soul power isn't affecting him? Cold sweat trickled down his face. The sudden burst of speed caused a wave of gasps to ripple through the crowd. They were amazed not only by his speed but also by the spirit shrouded in white light. The terrifying pressure from the spirit was palpable. Some with weaker constitutions couldn't hide their fear. If the pressure from Dai Yaming's white tiger spirit was like a stone, then the sacred white tiger spirit felt like a mountain, suffocating. It's magnificent, Bishop Ferdinand murmured, captivated by Dai Yao's spirit. This was the 3rd time he had seen it, but each time, he was awestruck. The momentum had shifted completely. Dai Yao stared coldly at Dai Yaming, tightening his fist. The liquid soul power in his body surged like a raging river. Bajiquan, collapse. His fist, imbued with raw power, hurtled toward Dai Yaming, creating a sharp, whistling sound. His punch was laced with internal force. If it landed, Dai Yaming would be temporarily incapacitated, just like Fatty. The fight would be over in an instant, but Dai Yaming was no pushover. A fighter handpicked by Davis wouldn't be defeated so easily. His first soul ring lit up, followed by white tiger barrier. Thump. The deafening impact echoed through the arena, and cracks appeared on the ground beneath Dai Yaming's feet. This was a field designed to withstand the force of Soul King-level battles. Many covered their ears, unable to bear the sound. When they looked back at the arena, the two had separated. After the Bajiquan attack was blocked, they exchanged a few blows, and Dai Yao realized he was being outmaneuvered. Without using his soul skills, he was no match for Dai Yaming. The difference in combat experience was too great. Just like his fight with Dai Mubai 3 years ago, he lacked practical experience. For the past 3 years, Dai Yao had focused solely on cultivating his soul power, neglecting combat training. You used that move to beat Fatty. How could I be unprepared? Dai Yaming smirked. According to Fatty, he felt pain in every organ when you hit him. It must be internal force. Dai Yao smiled and shook his head. Since Dai Yaming knew the secret behind Bajiquan, a quick victory was unlikely. If Bajiquan landed, he could win with a single blow, but Dai Yaming was ready for it. If the white tiger barrier couldn't be broken, Bajiquan's internal force would be useless. As a level 1 soul master, Bajiquan's power was considerable. Now, as a great soul master, its power was insufficient, making it impossible to break the white tiger barrier. Now, let's fight for real. Dai Yao's spirit flared. If tricks wouldn't work, he would win with strength. His soul power surged as his 2 soul rings materialized. Chapter 54 The Real Showdown. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 54, The Real Showdown. Seeing Dai Yao retreat after taking a hit, Dai Yaming lowered his fists, a smirk spreading across his face. Running away already? Can't handle a real fight? Just proves what everyone says, you're a coward. Anyone with eyes could see that Dai Yao's initial move had backfired. Dai Yaming had blocked it, putting Dai Yao at a disadvantage. That's the difference in real combat. The second prince will win. Yeah, the fourth prince is a joke. The gap in skill is too wide. The fourth prince is already failing. If he doesn't pull something out of his hat, he's done for, someone observed. Watching the match, Feng Wudong looked worried, and Yi Nanshan's expression darkened. Compared to Dai Yao's few supporters, the second prince had plenty. Seeing him gain the upper hand, the arena erupted in cheers. The sound crashed like waves, one after another. A wave of pressure rolled over Dai Yao, the invisible force making his steps feel heavier. In the stands, Zhu Zhuqing wrung her hands, while Zhu Zhuyue beside her was practically glowing with glee. Watch closely, dear sister. Enjoy the carnage about to unfold. Her eyes flashed, but her voice was cold. The fifth elder watched the field intently. Catching Bishop Ferdinand's eye, he noticed a glint of expectation there. What's he expecting? The fifth elder wondered. The events on the field soon answered his question. Even though his initial attack had failed, Dai Yao now understood the difference between himself and Dai Yaming, which was enough to guide his strategy. Alright, let's get this show on the road. Dai Yao's energy flared. Since the element of surprise was gone, he'd just have to win with sheer power. A real battle? Dai Yaming looked bewildered. He couldn't imagine how Dai Yao thought he stood a chance. Dai Yao unleashed his soul power. His plain white robe fluttered despite the lack of wind, and 2 soul rings rose from his feet. One yellow, one purple. The purple ring glowed brilliantly, a symbol of mysterious power. Whoa! The entire arena roared. People jumped to their feet, eyes glued to the purple soul ring. What is that? Am I seeing things? Someone rubbed their eyes in disbelief. You're not wrong. That's a 1,000-year soul ring, someone whispered, staring blankly. How did the fourth prince manage that? Is he really the useless trash everyone says he is? Some questioned Dai Yao's reputation. Is he even human? Someone pointed, sweat trickling down their face. The purple ring sent a jolt through the arena. Even the Soul Emperor referee was momentarily stunned. It took him a moment to remember his duty. Silence. Silence. The referee shot into the air, unleashing the full force of his power. Even then, it took a while for the arena to quiet down. Though the shock remained, the nobles in the stands also rose, leaning over the railing, staring in disbelief. How did he do it? The fifth elder's beard trembled. For the first time, he questioned the family's traditions. Are the rules right? Is it worth sacrificing a genius like Dai Yao just to uphold them? Bishop Ferdinand, seeing the shocking ring, barely contained his joy. Huh, a genius like that joining our spirit hall. It's a gift from the gods. The fifth elder saw Ferdinand's expression and scowled. What are you planning? If your spirit hall hurts Dai Yao, the Star Luo Empire will make you pay. Oh, fifth elder, please. I have no such intention. Dai Yao can't beat Davis anyway. He'll die. Why should I bother? The bishop's words infuriated the fifth elder, but he knew there was truth to them. He sighed inwardly, resolving to at least save Dai Yao's life and preserve his spirit and talent. Bishop Ferdinand put on his fake smile, secretly pleased. You don't value your geniuses? The spirit hall will gladly take them off your hands. As the arena quieted, everyone's attention returned to the duel. But the shock of the purple soul ring lingered. Dai Yaming stared, his heart pounding. He knew the match was slipping from his control. The outcome was now uncertain. Damn it! If it weren't for that damn Yi Nantian, I would have taken care of Dai Yao years ago. Why wait until now? Dai Yaming clenched his fists, his anger simmering, but he quickly calmed himself, looking at Dai Yao without emotion. I shouldn't have given you those 10 days, he said. No point dwelling on the past. Let's just get this over with. Eyes were fixed on Dai Yao, but he wasn't letting his guard down. In a fight to the death, there was no room for error. The purple ring pulsed, activating his second soul skill. The air crackled, swirling around Dai Yao in a spiral. As the ring flashed, he became enveloped in white light. The light gathered in front of his mouth, forming a glowing ball. The orb radiated an ominous energy. Dai Yao held his hands up, fingers together, thumbs apart, and took aim, locking onto his target. His eyes blazed. Second soul skill, white tiger light wave. A streak of white light, like lightning, crossed the arena. The force of the blast was deafening. The audience gasped, their hair and clothes whipped by the wind. Dai Yaming, watching the energy gathering, felt a surge of fear. He preferred crushing his opponents with brute force, not close-quarters combat, but looking at Zhu Zhuyue's worried face in the stands, his resolve hardened. So what if Dai Yao had a 1,000-year soul skill? His superior soul power wasn't just for show. Chapter 55 Collision. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 55, Collision. The second soul ring flared, unleashing the white tiger's fierce light wave. However, Dai Yao's soul skill was a 1,000-year skill, while Dai Yaming's was only a 100-year skill. Before everyone's eyes, the two identical white light waves slammed into each other. Where they met, the waves merged into a sphere, and energy poured into it from both sides. To everyone's surprise, the energy ball started inching its way toward Dai Yaming. This 1,000-year soul skill is the real deal. Dai Yao thought, pleased. Even with a 6-level soul power gap, it's still way more powerful than Dai Yaming's second soul skill. Dai Yaming's eyes widened as the energy ball crept closer. The aura of destruction radiating from it made his heart pound. This can't go on. He thought grimly. The light from his second soul ring faded. Without the white tiger's fierce light wave continuously feeding it, the energy ball hurtled toward Dai Yaming, engulfing him in an instant. The light wave didn't stop after passing through him. It blasted through the protective wall, leaving a gaping hole. Debris rained down from the opening. Dai Yaming supporters gasped. After that hit, they doubted he could even survive, let alone win the duel. Zhu Zhuyue watched the arena anxiously, desperately searching for Dai Yaming. She was starting to regret ever becoming enemies with Dai Yao. If Dai Yaming and Dai Yao had managed to form an alliance, the Xingluo Royal Academy's captaincy might have been Dai Yaming's. This whole situation could have been avoided. The fifth elder was shaken by Dai Yao's strength. If he defeated the second prince today, he might even be able to defeat the first prince given time. The prince who inherited the throne would surely elevate the Star Luo Empire to new heights. But would the first prince give Dai Yao that time? Would the queen, who backed the first prince, allow Dai Yao to grow unhindered? The fifth elder felt a pang of worry. Heavy footsteps echoed from the smoke. What's this? Dai Yao narrowed his eyes. He couldn't believe Dai Yaming could have survived that attack unscathed, but as the smoke cleared, Dai Yaming emerged, remarkably intact. His clothes were torn and his face was scratched, but his aura was undiminished, even stronger than before. His right arm, in particular, glowed with a blue light. The second prince's supporters erupted in cheers for their survivor. How did he block my attack? Dai Yao wondered. Then, noticing the glowing right arm, he understood. That must be his soul bone. Such a powerful soul bone skill to completely block my white tiger fierce light wave. Rumor has it you possess a valuable soul bone. That must be what you use to resist my 1,000-year soul skill, Dai Yao said, pointing at Dai Yaming's right arm. Correct, Dai Yaming said without hiding anything. Since his hand was already revealed, he extended his right arm, a malicious grin spreading across his face. A 3,000-year right arm bone, with the soul bone skill, destructive death ray. To compete for the throne, the second prince's mother had spared no expense in finding him this perfectly suited soul bone. Her family had sacrificed everything to help him win the throne. Like Dai Yao, he had to win this fight, no matter what. Dai Yao's heart skipped a beat when he heard 3,000-year-old right arm bone. That's not good. The age of that right arm bone is high, and the soul bone skill is the worst I could have expected. It's a pure offensive skill, so powerful that only my 1,000-year soul skill can compete. His greatest advantage had been his 1,000-year soul ring, but the second prince's soul bone had just negated it, bringing the situation back to a standstill. Looks like the outcome is decided, Davis said calmly. Though the situation seemed balanced, Dai Yao was at a disadvantage. The gap between them wasn't just in combat experience, but in soul power. How could Dai Yao's level 23 soul power compare to Dai Yaming's level 29 soul power? The previous clash had been a duel of soul skills, minimizing the impact of combat experience. If they fought without using soul skills, Dai Yao would likely lose quickly. Dai Yaming ripped off his damaged clothes, revealing his muscular physique. His eyes burned with murderous intent as he said coldly, I admit, your talent is astounding, but age is an insurmountable gap. Today, I won't give you another chance. Dai Yao ignored Dai Yaming's taunts. Words were useless, he knew his weaknesses. Combat experience wasn't his forte, so he needed to maximize his strengths, minimize his weaknesses, and rely on his soul skills as much as possible. What happened next surprised everyone. Whenever the second prince tried to engage Dai Yao in close combat, Dai Yao's first move was always the Baji burst. Knowing what was coming, Dai Yaming had to raise his white tiger barrier to defend. After one hit, Dai Yao used his explosive step to retreat and circle Dai Yaming. Then, after charging, he'd use Baji burst to attack Dai Yaming again. If he missed, he'd immediately run off, infuriating Dai Yaming. After several repetitions, Dai Yaming lost his patience and used his soul bone skill to attack Dai Yao. Dai Yao met it head-on, activating his second soul skill to block the second prince's attack, and so it continued. Dai Yao refused to fight Dai Yaming when his soul skills were on cooldown. The changing dynamic confused the spectators. Why was the battle unfolding this way? One chasing, one fleeing, it was almost comical. You're such a coward. You won't even face him head-on, Zhu Zhuqing snapped at Zhu Zhuqing. Hearing her words, several noble soul masters couldn't help but roll their eyes. If Dai Yaming didn't have that soul bone, this fight would be one-sided. Dai Yao would be completely dominating and beating Dai Yaming into the ground. Any other great soul master would have lost to Dai Yao by now. Zhu Zhuqing ignored Zhu Zhuyue, pursing her lips tightly as she watched the arena intently. Every time Dai Yao and Dai Yaming's soul skills clashed, her heart clenched. Using soul skills to negate Dai Yaming's combat experience was smart, but what about soul power? Every soul skill used drained soul power. How could level 23 Dai Yao hope to compete with level 29 Dai Yaming in terms of soul power? As time wore on, the audience began to understand what was happening. Dai Yao was slowly burning himself out. Once his soul power was depleted, he'd be finished. A sinister smile crept across Dai Yaming's lips. If Dai Yao wanted a soul skill duel, he'd give him one. He didn't believe he could lose in a battle of soul power. Everyone was pessimistic about Dai Yao's chances, but Dai Yao remained calm. The liquid soul power surged within him. Chapter 56 Competition of Soul Power Consumption. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 56, Soul Power Showdown. Using soul power in a duel is smart, but it won't close the gap. He's just hanging on. Davis watched the match, unimpressed. He glanced at the wasted Dai Mubai, thinking, today, Dai Yao bites the dust. Mubai's a joke. Guess that leaves you for me, Dai Yaming. After some back and forth, the crowd caught on to Dai Yao's strategy, avoid close combat and wear him down with soul skills. Everyone knew Dai Yao was playing a losing game. This kid's like a fly buzzing in your ear. Can't swat him, can't shake him. Dai Yaming fumed. He was just waiting for Dai Yao to run dry, then he'd make him pay. A punch landed, and Dai Yaming broke a sweat. If he hadn't thrown up the white tiger barrier at the last second, he'd be eating canvas like fatty. He sucked it up and started watching Dai Yao like a hawk. They traded a few more soul skill blows, each attacking and defending. Before long, Dai Yao and Dai Yaming had thrown down several rounds of white tiger light waves and destructive death rays. They were both panting and dripping with sweat, unleashing that kind of power over and over takes a major toll. Damn it, how does he still have juice? Dai Yaming looked up at Dai Yao, just as winded as he was, and felt a jolt of shock. He was running on fumes, less than 30% soul power. Dai Yao should have been tapped out ages ago. How was he still cranking out those 1,000-year soul abilities? What's his deal? Is he packing more soul power than anyone his level? What's he hiding? That this fight was way harder than Dai Yaming had figured. He never thought Dai Yao could push him this far, especially after pulling out his soul bone skill. Thinking about Dai Yao's bag of tricks, Dai Yaming started to feel cold. How could he be this strong at his age? The audience started to catch on that something was off. How does the fourth prince still have any soul power left? A normal level 23 soul master would have been dead in the water by now. As the fight dragged on, more and more soul masters realized what was going down. Murmurs turned into a full-blown uproar. On the field, Dai Yao was all quick steps and cool calculation. A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. Dai Yaming's soul power slugfest was playing right into his hands. Sure, his soul power level was only 23, but he was packing more total soul power than even some low-level soul masters. His soul power was liquid, which kept his level lower, but after 3 years of non-stop training, twice absorbing soul rings that were way too strong, he'd forged his soul power into something unbreakable. After all those soul skill battles, he was still at 50% soul power. He had way more left in the tank than Dai Yaming at level 29. Dai Yao used his burst of speed to dance across the field, eyes locked on Dai Yaming. He just needed an opening to drop his second soul skill. The white tiger light wave came again, forcing Dai Yaming to block with his destructive death light. Dai Yaming was getting desperate, a deep crease forming between his eyebrows. After his soul bone skill, he was down to fumes, enough for maybe one more shot. He'd reached his limit, and the tables had turned. Dai Yao had been the prey, now he was the hunter. He wasn't laughing about Dai Yao's choice to make this a soul power contest anymore. He thought about what happened when he lost, and fear spiked in his chest. 3 years ago, after Dai Mubai's defeat, he'd fallen apart, and everyone at the academy still laughed about it, and he wasn't even sure he'd make it out of this fight alive. No, I have to live, Dai Yaming told himself, but with only one soul bone skill shot left, it was just a matter of time. The audience gasped. The second prince's martial spirit possession flickered, then died. He couldn't hold it anymore. Did the second prince just run out of juice? Dai Yaming's fans couldn't believe what they were seeing. One of them slumped against the stone steps, defeated. How can the level 29 second prince be tapped out while the level 23 fourth prince is still bouncing around? That everyone was asking the same thing. Up on the platform, Zhu Zhuyue collapsed. She stared at the field, lost in thought. Zhu Zhuqing, Feng Wudong, and the others were cheering. They could taste victory. Yi Nantian frowned as Dai Yaming reverted to normal. He figured Dai Yaming was faking weakness, trying to set up one last, desperate attack. The fifth elder was conflicted. Both princes were rare talents. Either loss would break his heart, but these were the rules of the White Tiger clan. Dai Yaming was on the ropes, but he might still have a shot if his gamble paid off, and Dai Yao would be dead if he didn't see it coming. He shut his eyes, unable to watch. Next to him, Bishop Ferdinand smiled. Dai Yao winning was great. He'd be leaving the Star Luo Empire after the duel. If Dai Yao lost, he'd have to beg for protection from the Spirit Hall. Then, Ferdinand would be calling the shots. This duel had been full of surprises. Either way, Dai Yao would survive, but it was also a test. Never underestimate your opponent, even if they're on their last legs. Now Dai Yao had the upper hand, but he needed to play it right. A loss wouldn't change his treatment at the Spirit Hall, but they'd definitely think less of him. Dai Yao grinned when he saw Dai Yaming's martial spirit possession disappear. 3 years of brutal training, of loneliness and boredom, were finally paying off. He was going to repay Dai Yaming for the humiliation he'd suffered 3 years ago, and he was going to do it in front of everyone. He started walking toward Dai Yaming, unable to hide his smile. Revenge was at hand. Every step was like a death knell, sending shivers through the second prince's supporters. Everyone watched Dai Yao approach. Dai Mubai dropped his wine bottle. Zhu Zhuyue couldn't bear to look, and covered her eyes. Dai Yao was about to beat Dai Yaming, and they just couldn't believe it. Dai Yaming stared at the ground, heart pounding. Closer, closer. Just a few more steps and I'll be in range for the destructive death ray. Chapter 57 Another Fight with Zhu Zhuyue. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 57, Round 2 with Zhu Zhuyue. Dai Yao's gut clenched. This felt familiar. Wasn't this exactly how it went down during his fight with Yi Nantian when he was a first-ring soul master? Yi Nantian had baited him with an opening, and he'd jumped in without thinking. If it weren't for the sacred white tiger spirit, he might have lost right then and there. How was Dai Yaming any different? 6 years of cold palace life had taught him caution, and it kicked in hard. He stopped dead in his tracks, used explosive step, and retreated. They were on the verge of victory. Why back off now? The crowd was baffled and started buzzing. Yi Nantian breathed a sigh of relief, secretly impressed. That kid's got eyes. He saw right through the second prince's trap. If I were in the arena, with everyone watching, I wouldn't have had that kind of cool and I would have already attacked. Bishop Ferdinand beamed, nodding approvingly. The boy has talent and a good head on his shoulders. He's destined for Spirit Hall. He glanced at Zhu Zhuqing, who was still on edge, and couldn't help but think, talk about a 2-for-1 deal. Not only did we get a sacred white tiger spirit, but a ghost cat spirit too. And they can fuse their souls. They've got to be destined to join our Spirit Hall. Seeing Dai Yao pull out of range, Dai Yaming's eyes went wide with desperation. Why are you retreating? Why? Dai Yao stayed silent. Dai Yaming's reaction confirmed his suspicions. If he'd been careless and fallen for that soul bone trick, he'd be the one eating dirt right now. His second soul ring lit up with power. 1,000-year soul skill, white tiger fierce light wave. Again with this move. Dai Yaming felt his hopes crumble. If he couldn't withstand the white tiger fierce light wave, he'd be out of commission. He summoned the last dregs of his soul power, activated his soul bone skill, and threw everything he had into it. The two powers collided, locking in a stalemate. Slowly, both energies fizzled out. Dai Yaming collapsed to his knees, staring up at the sky, tears streaming down his face. This defeat wasn't just his. It ruined everything for his fiancée and his mother's family too. A wave of regret crashed over him. If he had just cooperated with Dai Yao, been on good terms, none of this would have happened. He'd let down Zhu Zhuyue and his mother's hopes. Dai Yao, still wary, wondered if Dai Yaming was faking it, holding something back. He kept his distance, letting his soul power surge, ready to unleash another white tiger wave to see if Dai Yaming really was spent. He moved slowly, his 1,000-year soul skill glowing, aimed at Dai Yaming, who was kneeling before him. The crowd gasped. Zhu Zhuyue cried out in despair as the white tiger fierce light wave slammed into Dai Yaming. The white light faded, revealing Dai Yaming writhing on the ground. He looked burned, barely recognizable, only ragged breaths escaping his lips. Looks like he's really got nothing left. Dai Yao's mind was cold. He used explosive step, driving a Bajiquan punch deep into Dai Yaming's gut. The impact echoed across the arena as Dai Yaming hit the ground, blood spewing from his mouth. 3 years of humiliation ends today. Dai Yao roared. He pummeled Dai Yaming relentlessly, blood splattering on his clothes. Many in the crowd turned away, unable to watch the brutal display. Up on the platform, Zhu Zhuyue wept. Feng Wudong and others who supported Dai Yao cheered wildly. Even Zhu Zhuqing managed a rare, beautiful smile. Dai Yao, breathing hard, stared down at the near-lifeless Dai Yaming. He hadn't held back a single blow, unleashing all the humiliation he'd endured for the past 3 years. The guy was tough, though. Even this beaten, he was still breathing. Dai Yao grabbed Dai Yaming by the neck, slowly lifted him up, and turned toward Zhu Zhuyue on the platform, a cruel smile twisting his lips. No! Zhu Zhuyue cried, tears streaming down her face. Dai Yao held Dai Yaming aloft, declaring his victory. The coward label that had clung to Dai Yao for 3 years shattered into dust. The scene left the spectators stunned. The arena fell silent. All eyes were fixed on the demon-like figure in the arena. Dai Yao threw Dai Yaming to the ground, stepped on his head, and pointed at Zhu Zhuyue. Zhu Zhuyue, I told you 3 years ago, don't regret what you did that day. Today, you pay the price. I'm giving you a chance. Step into the arena and fight me. If you win, I'll let Dai Yaming go." His voice boomed through the arena. The crowd erupted at Dai Yao's challenge. The fourth prince just fought the second prince. Even if he won by luck, there's no way he's got any soul power left. Yeah, the fourth prince is being arrogant. Why would he pick a fight with a great soul master when he's almost drained? Most believed Dai Yao was running on fumes and was walking into a death trap by challenging Zhu Zhuqing, a great soul master herself, but Dai Yaming, with his head pinned to the ground, knew better. He could still feel the surging soul power in Dai Yao's punches. Dai Yao had burned through his level 29 soul power and still had plenty in the tank. The man was a monster. Only his strong soul bone skill could compete with Dai Yao, but Zhu Zhuyue not only has less soul power than him, but also has less soul skills than him. As a spirit master of the agility attack system, Zhu Zhuyue's most advantageous speed is almost the same as Dai Yao. It can be said that Zhu Zhuyue has no chance of winning against Dai Yao. Dai Yao had no intention of letting them go. His head was pressed under his feet and it was difficult to open his mouth. He struggled to spit out two words, "No." He stretched out his scarred hands, grabbed Dai Yao's feet, and begged in a hoarse voice, "Please, let her go. Torture me all you want." Dai Yao was surprised. Turns out the second prince was a lovesick fool, but he was running out of time. He'd be leaving the Star Luo Empire soon and wouldn't be back for a long time. He wasn't about to let Zhu Zhuyue live in peace. If he hadn't shown up when he did, Zhu Zhuqing might be dead right now. There was no way he was letting Zhu Zhuyue off the hook. Seeing Zhu Zhuyue hesitate, Dai Yao baited her. "What's wrong? I'm almost out of soul power. You, a great soul master, are too scared to accept my challenge. Or are you just a coward?" Chapter 58 Final Chapter. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 58 Finale. Dai Yao actually got his hat back in perfect condition. Talk about self-inflicted. Zhu Zhuyue thought, her eyes narrowed, trying to read Dai Yao's face, see if he was bluffing. But his expression was a mask of pure rage, giving nothing away. Knowing that Dai Yao had already been fighting for a while and must be running on fumes, she took a deep breath. Her peach blossom eyes hardened. She refused to believe that even a weakened Dai Yao was beyond her. "Fine, you want to die? I'll help you along." Meanwhile, Dai Yaming was still on the ground, begging Dai Yao to spare Zhu Zhuyue. Dai Yao ignored him, a cruel grin spreading across his face as he heard Zhu Zhuyue accept the challenge. He kicked Dai Yaming aside and stepped onto the dueling platform, ready to face her. Zhu Zhuqing watched, anxiety clawing at her. She understood Dai Yao's desire for revenge, but didn't want him putting himself in danger for her sake, not in his current state. Just as she was about to call out to Dai Yao, Dai Hengyu stopped her. Trust him. He wouldn't have publicly challenged Zhu Zhuyue unless he was confident he could win. Dai Hengyu knew the hell Dai Yao had endured these past 3 years. Plus, Dai Yao was about to leave the Star Luo Empire, meaning there wouldn't be another chance for revenge anytime soon. This was it, his last shot. Amidst the murmurs of the crowd, the duel officially began. Zhu Zhuyue cast a look of pity at Dai Yaming, who was still groveling and begging for her life, then glared at Dai Yao. If looks could kill, Dai Yao would already be 6 feet under. "I will avenge you," Zhu Zhuyue vowed silently. She was wary of Dai Yao's power. Activating her martial soul, she didn't charge in for a head-on fight. Instead, she used her agility as an attack-type soul master, circling around him, trying to wear him down, just like Dai Yao had done to Dai Yaming. Her plan was simple: drain Dai Yao's soul power to guarantee a safe win. After all, he just fought a whole match. "Smart," Dai Yao said, recognizing her strategy. "But what good will it do you?" A surge of white light erupted around him. Wings sprouted from his back, and the character on his forehead pulsed with an unbearable pressure, a force that made people want to kneel. The sheer pressure of his martial soul was enough to send shivers down the spines of the soul masters in the front rows. For Zhu Zhuyue, facing him head-on, it was even worse. The overwhelming martial soul pressure was making her soul power sluggish. Her steps faltered, and her speed plummeted. Crap. A cold dread washed over Zhu Zhuyue. Gotcha. A predatory smile stretched across Dai Yao's face. He channeled his soul power, activating an explosive burst of speed. Under the oppressive martial soul aura, Zhu Zhuyue's movement seemed like a snail's pace. Dai Yao closed the distance with terrifying speed, catching up with her in the blink of an eye. Panic flared in Zhu Zhuyue's heart. A wave of impending doom crashed over her. Her eyes widened as she glanced back. Dai Yao's face was a mask of cold fury, and the raw energy crackling around him signaled a devastating soul skill was coming. She knew she couldn't escape. Her only option was to fight. The yellow soul ring on her body lit up. Second soul skill, Netherworld 100 Claws, that she crouched low, unleashing a torrent of lavender claw strikes, aimed at tearing Dai Yao to pieces. No. Dai Yaming, still helpless on the ground, cried out in despair. Baji collapse. Dai Yao roared, channeling his power, ignoring the barrage of Zhu Zhuyue's Netherworld 100 Claws. He took the hits head-on, and landed a devastating punch square on Zhu Zhuyue. As Zhu Zhuyue was sent flying, a flicker of triumph crossed her face. She was badly hurt, but Dai Yao had absorbed her second soul skill. He had to be in worse shape. But then, a chilling realization dawned. She had blocked Dai Yao's attack with her hand, and the force had left her palm numb. The numbness spread quickly, racing up her arm, then engulfing her entire body. It blossomed into agonizing pain. Her internal organs burned, and the agony was almost unbearable. Zhu Zhuyue screamed, collapsing to the ground in a fetal position, writhing in agony. Dai Yaming, still lying nearby, looked on in despair. He had been wary of that move when he faced Dai Yao, but Zhu Zhuyue had no defense against it. She was defeated in a single exchange. A surge of satisfaction coursed through Dai Yao. That was the power of Njin, the secret force of Baji. He had deliberately taken the brunt of Zhu Zhuyue's soul skill. All so Baji Beng could connect. Once it hit, the fight was over. He'd crippled Zhu Zhuyue in an instant. Ordinary great soul masters weren't even worthy opponents. Only Dai Yaming, with his top-tier martial soul and even a soul bone, could stand a chance. Even after that exchange, Dai Yao still had 20% of his soul power left. It was safe to say that, among great soul masters, he was untouchable. He walked towards Zhu Zhuyue, looking down at her with cold disdain. When you were so eager to insult me and Zhu Qing, did you ever think this day would come? Zhu Zhuyue's once alluring face was contorted with terror, all traces of her earlier arrogance gone. Dai Yao raised his right hand, channeling his soul power. He brought it down with brutal force on Zhu Zhuyue. The ground trembled, and blood splattered as the tower violently shook. The sight of Dai Yao's ruthless brutality shocked many of the spectators, but no one could move to help her because they would be breaking the rules. How could he bring himself to harm such a beautiful woman? Two bad knives and hidden weapons were not allowed in the duel field. Fists were the only weapons allowed. He slowly raised his bloodied fist. It was all her blood. This punch is for Zhu Qing. If it weren't for me, she would have died days ago, Dai Yao said coldly. He landed the blow, and Zhu Zhuyue's face crumpled. As Dai Yao raised his fist again, he felt a hand clutch at his foot. It was Dai Yaming's scarred hand. He had crawled to Dai Yao, clutching at his feet, begging. Let her go. It's all my fault. I sent Fatty to ruin your reputation. Please, let her go. I'll trade my life for hers. Zhu Zhuyue, still lying motionless on the ground, heard his words. Tears streamed down her disfigured face. The crowd gasped, deeply moved by the depth of Dai Yaming and Zhu Zhuyue's love. Even as royals, they never imagined that their love could inspire such sacrifice. Dai Yao ignored Dai Yaming, kicking him aside, ready to finish Zhu Zhuyue. How can the fourth prince be so cruel? He has no sympathy at all. Seeing Dai Yao prepare to strike again, the crowd began to voice their condemnation. They couldn't understand why Dai Yao was still attacking after he'd already beaten them so badly. Wasn't it just a reputation dragged through the mud for 3 years? Didn't Zhu Zhuqing get hurt in the duel? Why hold on so tight? Deaf to the crowd's criticism, Dai Yao focused his soul power. Suddenly, a voice echoed in his mind. Chapter 59 Broken Arm. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 59, Broken Arm Knock It Off, Dai Yao. The second prince is mine to deal with. That's the right of whoever wins the throne. Win the throne, and you can get your revenge on both of them. Dai Yao recognized the fifth elder's voice. He glanced at the fifth elder up on the platform, but didn't give him the time of day. He knew if he'd lost today, the fifth elder would be all over Dai Yaming, stopping him. Family rules always trumped everything else in the fifth elder's book, but why should he stop? All because of some messed up family rules. Screw those rules. He wasn't a glutton for punishment. He was already at a huge disadvantage in this competition for the throne. He was the youngest, and with his mother gone, he was facing all three princes by himself, and where was the family? Did they even bother upholding their precious rules? Where were they when he was stuck in the cold palace, getting pushed around by eunuchs? Just recently, one of the second prince's guys had the nerve to insult him. And what did the family do? Jack squat, they just waved some imaginary promise that he could do whatever he wanted if he won the throne. No upfront incentive. Why should he risk his neck for them? They couldn't even guarantee fairness, so why should he be loyal? Dai Yao scoffed, ignoring the fifth elder, and got ready to keep going after Dai Yaming. The fifth elder narrowed his eyes. Is that kid Dai Yao seriously going to break the rules? Bishop Ferdinand, standing next to him, was practically drooling with anticipation. If Dai Yao threw that punch, he'd be officially cutting ties with the star Luo royal family. The arena was buzzing with anticipation. With the fifth elder watching like a hawk, Bishop Ferdinand was practically bouncing. Dai Yao was ready to throw that punch, when he saw Dai Hengyu subtly shaking his head. Don't do it. Dai Yao froze. He could ignore everyone else, but he had to listen to Dai Hengyu. He glared at the second prince and Zhu Zhuqing, huddled together, shaking. The fist he'd cocked back seemed to turn to stone. Seeing something was up, Dai Yaming opened his eyes. He saw the murderous intent on Dai Yao's face fading. He yanked Zhu Zhuqing up and started groveling, banging his head on the ground. Thank you, Your Highness. Thank you, Fourth Highness. Show us mercy, please. Their foreheads were soon bleeding. They slowly got to their feet, ready to bolt, when Dai Yao cut them off. Hold it. I didn't say you were free to go. Dai Yao's voice was like a death knell in Dai Yaming's ears. Cut off your arm, and I'll let you go. Dai Yao spoke coldly. Today's humiliation would stick with Dai Yaming forever. While it wouldn't solve all of his problems, taking an arm would seriously reduce Dai Yaming's future threat. There was no way he'd ever reach the level of a titled Douluo without it. In the original story, Tang Hao chopped off an arm and a leg to give his soul bones back to the Haotian sect. His soul power dropped from over 90 to 79, and he flatlined there. It wasn't until Tang Sen used the blue-silver domain's power to restore Tang Hao's limbs that he was able to become a titled Douluo again. For regular folks, there was zero chance of getting a limb back. Only someone like Tang San could pull that off. As long as Dai Yaming lost an arm, he couldn't be a threat to Dai Yao unless he became a titled Douluo. The fifth elder wouldn't let him kill them, but breaking Dai Yaming's arm was his red line. Dai Yaming and Zhu Zhuyue's faces lit up when they thought they were getting off easy, but the thought of losing an arm quickly brought them back down to earth. Dai Yaming gritted his teeth. Okay, I promise. Break my arm, and you let us both walk away. You got my word, Dai Yao replied. No. Zhu Zhuyue, who was barely recognizable, grabbed Dai Yaming's arm, trying to stop him, tears streaming down her face. She knew Dai Yaming's goal was to get stronger and take the throne. Losing an arm would mean he'd never reach his full potential as a soul master. It would haunt him forever. Hearing Dai Yao's condition, she regretted her actions. Dai Yaming gently pulled Zhu Zhuyue's hand away and smiled, his face covered in blood. It was a little creepy. He tried to reassure her. It's all right. It's worth losing an arm to stay alive. He knew why Dai Yao wanted him to do it. If he didn't agree, Dai Yao would kill him right there. After 3 years of thankless training and putting up with insults without a peep, Dai Yao was clearly not someone to be trifled with. Even the family rules might not be enough to hold him back. He took a deep breath, channeled his soul power, put his right hand on his left arm, and went for it. His left arm came clean off, blood spraying everywhere like a fountain. Beams of light shot down from the stands and landed on Dai Yaming. The wound started to close. Dai Yaming's face was as white as a sheet. He was dripping with sweat from the pain. He spoke weakly. There. That's it. Dai Yao nodded, asterisk he's got guts, asterisk Dai Yao thought. Zhu Zhuyue glared at Dai Yao. Dai Yaming walked over to her, smiled, and shook his head, telling her not to hate Dai Yao. They brought this on themselves. They were lucky to be alive, thanks to Dai Yao's mercy. Then Zhu Zhuyue helped Dai Yaming up, and they staggered down the aisle and disappeared into the tunnel. Scattered applause started in the arena. It quickly spread, growing louder and louder, until it sounded like thunder. Even though the outcome of the duel was a surprise, the second prince's single-minded pursuit of power and the fourth prince's skill were an epic spectacle. Everyone knew that a new star had risen in the Star Luo Empire. A talent like that was rare in the history books. Zhu Zhuqing jumped down from the stands, ran to the arena, and threw herself into Dai Yao's arms, tears streaming down her face. Dai Yao was surprised. This was the first time he'd ever seen Zhu Zhuqing, who was always so cold, show that much emotion in front of him. After a while, Zhu Zhuqing came to her senses, her cheeks flushed. She shyly turned away. A lot of students were jealous to see the campus ice queen acting like that in Dai Yao's arms, but they couldn't really be mad. With how amazing Dai Yao was now, you could say Zhu Zhuqing had really leveled up on the platform. The fifth elder stared at Dai Yao for a long time without saying anything. Dai Yao's actions had clearly broken the family rules. Thinking about Dai Yao's potential, all his anger faded into a sigh. Bishop Ferdinand smirked at the fifth elder, like he knew something the fifth elder didn't. The fifth elder scoffed at Ferdinand's smug mug and walked off. Among the crowd, only one pair of eyes were filled with cold hatred. Davis. Chapter 60 Don't Mess with 4. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After today, Davis is going to see Dai Yao as a real threat. The kid's only 9, while Dai Yaming is 15. That's 6 years less training, and he still beat Dai Yaming, and Dai Yaming wasn't just any chump. He had a killer beast soul and a soul bone, plus his soul power was pushing level 30. He was basically unbeatable among great soul masters. Then Dai Yao comes along, 6 levels lower, and wipes the floor with him. If Dai Yao had more experience in actual fights, it wouldn't have even been a contest. The crowd went nuts, and Davis. He was stone cold. That's when Dai Yao felt it, an icy stare. He knew where it came from, and his victory high started to fade. He locked eyes with Davis, unflinching. He knew their paths were going to cross in the fight for the throne, but Davis wasn't going to make the same mistake as Dai Yaming and give Dai Yao room to grow. Davis just scoffed and stormed out of the arena with Zhu Zhuyue. Dai Yao's spirits plummeted. Davis is going to come after me. I need to get out of the Star Luo Empire, and fast. After the duel, Dai Yao holed up in the training simulator for days. He trained non-stop under that waterfall. He might have won against Dai Yaming, but he wasn't about to let up. Dai Yaming was just one hurdle. He knew he'd face tougher opponents down the road. Originally, he planned to bolt from the Star Luo Empire right after the fight, but Zhu Zhuqing still needed her second soul ring and had to go back to her family to hunt for a soul beast. Apparently, the Zhu family had a special breeding program to cultivate soul masters with specific martial arts skills. Finding the right soul beast in the Tiando Empire was a long shot. So even though time was tight, Zhu Zhuqing had to head back to her family. Things were better for them now, at least. Ever since Dai Yao smoked Dai Yaming, Zhu Zhuqing's stock had gone up. The bullies at the Zhu family were suddenly all smiles and politeness. Zhu Zhuqing knew it was all because of Dai Yao. She felt like she hit the jackpot landing him as her fiancé. While Zhu Zhuqing was gone, Dai Yao's life did a complete 180. Suddenly, everyone wanted to be on his team, trying to cozy up to him. With Dai Yaming out of the picture, the eldest prince pretty much owned the academy. One of the supposed untouchable factions was gone, and the other two didn't even compare to the eldest prince's crew. The power vacuum had everyone scrambling. They figured they could get in on the ground floor with the fourth prince and create a new power base. Dai Yao might have only been a great soul master, with a huge power gap between him and the eldest prince, not to mention the difference in family influence, but Dai Yao kept pulling off miracles, taking down the third and second princes, one after the other, and then absorbing a 1,000-year soul ring for his second ring. That was enough for people to take a gamble. they used to think the difference between the fourth prince and the others was too big to overcome, but look at him now. They figured, maybe he could take the eldest prince down too, plus, Dai Yao was a total underdog before, so nobody took him seriously. After that fight, everyone saw his potential. Now it was all about getting on his good side, so, they were all lining up to kiss his ring and offer him their support, but Dai Yao wasn't having it. He was leaving the Star Luo Empire soon, and he didn't care about becoming some big shot. Besides, once Dai Yaming recovers, Davis would be gunning for him. Davis wasn't going to give him a chance to train this time around. Sometimes, discretion is the better part of valor. He needed to avoid that showdown with Davis. For the first time in 3 years, he walked into the fancy dining hall in the cafeteria. The contempt and disdain were gone. Even in a plain robe, he commanded respect from every soul master in the room. The moment he stepped inside, all eyes were on him. He was like a lion, surveying his territory. He ate without any of the proper etiquette or manners, but nobody batted an eye. The nobles thought Dai Yao was just cool and down to earth. That's the power of strength. When you're strong enough, you can get away with anything. He'd been kicked out of this place by Dai Yaming, and he never went back. It became a sore spot for him. He came back to bury the hatchet, but it wasn't as satisfying as he'd hoped. It was kind of a letdown, actually, but out of all the changes, the one that bugged him the most was all the girls throwing themselves at him. It used to be that people would show up at his training sessions just to watch the freak of the academy. Now, he had girls fawning over him day and night, and it was driving him nuts. He couldn't even walk down the street without being harassed. Whenever some girl got too clingy, Zhu Zhuqing would give him that look. He had a feeling that if she could use her martial arts, she'd have already started swinging at these girls. Maybe he would have enjoyed it in another life, but now he was just sick of it. It's cramping my style, Dai Yao thought. Annoyed, women were secondary to cultivation, plus he already had an icy beauty by his side who put most of the academy to shame. If it was Hu Liena or Qian Renxue, then I'd think about it. Dai Yao mused to himself. Even better if it was Bibi Dong or Bo Saishi. Night, there was no moon, and heavy clouds covered the sky. The forest was pitch black, and the sounds of wild animals echoed through the trees. There was a knock on the door. "Come in," Dai Yao said, his eyes narrowed. "Please don't let it be another groupie. Looks like His Highness has been having some trouble lately," the visitor teased. He knew all about Dai Yao's problems and what was bugging him. The person was wearing a black robe. When he took off the hood, Dai Yao instantly recognized him. "It's you," Dai Yao said, surprised. It was Lan Yuxuan, one of the untouchables in the academy, the leader of several principalities and kingdoms, and the crown prince of the Bailtan kingdom. "On the orders of Platinum Bishop Ferdinand of the Star Luo Empire's Spirit Temple, we are here to help the Fourth Highness leave the Star Luo Empire."